The death of Moses on Mount Nebo marked not just the end of an era, but the beginning of a breathtaking chain of events that would forever change the destiny of Israel. Imagine standing on that windswept mountain, watching the life of one of history's greatest leaders slip away, yet sensing that something far greater is stirring. The air is charged with anticipation, as if heaven itself leans in, ready to act. In an instant, God transfers leadership to Joshua, a man trained in patience, courage, and faith, proving that divine plans never falter, even when the giants of history fall. This moment is more than a historical account, it is a vivid lesson for us today. Life moves forward, often in ways we cannot predict, and opportunities can arrive in the most unexpected seasons. Just as Joshua stepped into his calling with trembling hands but unwavering obedience, each of us is invited to embrace the paths God lays before us. Even when uncertainty feels overwhelming, the story of Moses and Joshua reminds us that leadership, courage, and faith are not always about titles or recognition. They are about readiness to answer a higher call, to act boldly when the moment arrives. If you are ready to explore the 7 astonishing events that immediately followed Moses' death, events that shook a nation and revealed the unstoppable force of God's plan, you are in the right place. Join us as we uncover miracles, lessons, and divine wisdom hidden in this incredible story. Do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our deep dives into the most fascinating tales from the Bible. Turn on notifications and be part of a journey that connects history, faith, and life-changing insight. Your adventure into the extraordinary begins right now. Let us step into this story together. For decades, Joshua had walked in the shadow of Moses, learning the rhythms of divine leadership in ways that no crowd could witness, no historian could record, and no trumpet could announce. From the earliest days of his service, he had been entrusted with tasks that demanded patience, discretion, and unwavering faith, yet offered no immediate reward or recognition. He had stood at the edge of holy encounters, observing Moses ascend mountains wreathed in smoke and fire, feeling the tremors beneath his feet as glory descended from heaven, and guarding sacred spaces where ordinary men dared not linger. In those quiet moments of apprenticeship, Joshua's character was being shaped not by accolades but by endurance, by the discipline of service, and by the relentless refining of his spirit. He learned to listen not to the voices of men, but to the whisper of God, discerning purpose beneath the surface of every command. Every hardship, every moment of waiting. When the time came for Moses to depart from the world, Joshua was already more than a second in command. He was a vessel prepared to carry a weight far greater than any human ambition could bear. His courage had been tempered in the crucible of unseen trials. His humility had been nurtured by years of quiet obedience, and his wisdom had been cultivated through countless experiences where the divine plan unfolded in ways invisible to the untrained eye. Standing before the people of Israel, Joshua was no longer the assistant who followed quietly behind a prophet, but the appointed leader whose every step would now shape the future of a nation. The moment Moses breathed his last, the mantle of leadership passed not through ceremony or human consensus, but by the direct act of God, transferring not just responsibility but vision, authority, and divine favor. Joshua's preparation had been holistic. He understood strategy and timing, but he also understood the hearts of the people he would lead. He knew fear, having confronted giants and armies in scouting missions. Yet he never let doubt rewrite the promises he had witnessed firsthand. He had learned that true authority comes not from asserting control, but from aligning oneself with the source of ultimate power, from trusting that God's presence guides every decision and secures every victory. Every step he had taken in the wilderness, every lesson in restraint, every night spent in watchful prayer, had been a rehearsal for the moment when faith would meet responsibility in a convergence so profound that the entire course of history would shift in a single generation. As the nation looked to him for direction, Joshua carried with him the lessons of patience and discernment, of leading without reliance on the accolades of men, and of stepping into a divine plan that demanded courage beyond natural ability. The humility that had kept him in the shadows now enabled him to embrace authority without pride, while the spiritual wisdom he had gathered allowed him to see beyond the immediate battles to the unseen forces that governed the outcome of every conquest. In the wake of Moses' passing, it was this combination of character, faith, and preparedness that allowed Joshua to rise seamlessly into his calling, transforming uncertainty into decisive action and fear into unwavering courage, proving that the invisible years of training often lay the foundation for the most visible triumphs. In this way, Joshua's story unfolds not merely as a historical account, but as a timeless testament to the power of preparation, the necessity of patience, and the quiet shaping of character that precedes every great moment of destiny. It is a reminder that leadership is forged long before it is tested, and that true readiness is the product of years of unseen devotion. Disciplined obedience, and an intimate partnership with the divine. When Joshua stepped forward to guide Israel, he was not simply continuing a legacy. He was embodying the culmination of decades of meticulous preparation, proving that the purposes of God are always in motion, quietly crafting the vessels through which his plans will be revealed. The moment Moses' life drew to a close on Mount Nebo, a profound stillness fell over the Israelite camp, as if the very air waited with bated breath for the next chapter to unfold. Decades of wandering, rebellion, and intermittent obedience had left scars deep within the hearts of the people, shaping a generation that had seen both the power and patience of God displayed in miraculous ways, yet also the consequences of defiance. Amid this complex landscape of fear, hope, and uncertainty, the presence of Joshua emerged not merely as a successor, but as a symbol of continuity and divine purpose. The people, having witnessed his long apprenticeship alongside Moses, understood that he was more than a figurehead. He was the vessel through which God's promises would continue, the living embodiment of guidance, courage, and faith tested over years of preparation. In those first hours following Moses' death, the Israelites came together, not in murmuring or confusion, but in a collective, almost instinctive acknowledgement of Joshua's leadership. Their pledge of allegiance was not simply a ceremonial formality. It was an act of collective commitment, a profound recognition that their destiny as a nation was intertwined with the guidance of a leader chosen and appointed by God. Past rebellions and moments of doubt could have fractured them. Yet in this critical hour, they demonstrated a remarkable unity, signaling a readiness to embrace the divine authority now vested in Joshua. This unity was not superficial compliance, but the outward manifestation of trust that had been nurtured silently over the years through shared experiences of survival, divine intervention, and witnessing the consistency of God's hand in their journey. Joshua, standing before the assembled tribes, felt the weight of responsibility settle upon his shoulders with an immediacy that was both daunting and clarifying. He understood that leadership was not measured merely by the capacity to command but by the ability to inspire trust, foster cohesion, and guide a people still fragile from the lessons of past failures. Every glance he cast across the crowd revealed not just followers but individuals whose faith had been honed through years of wandering, their hearts and minds now poised to align with a purpose larger than themselves. The moment of their allegiance was a testament to the invisible work of preparation, both his own and that of the nation, where years of instruction, observation, and spiritual formation converged to create a readiness that could withstand the trials yet to come. The pledge of the Israelites also underscored a profound spiritual truth. Leadership ordained by God transcends personal ambition and human hesitation, and when the right vessel is in place, even a people familiar with doubt and defiance can respond with swift obedience. In this act of unity, the nation signaled that it would move forward not in the shadow of fear or past mistakes, but under the guidance of a leader who carried the wisdom, courage, and divine favor necessary to navigate the challenges ahead. Their collective readiness to follow was a mirror of Joshua's own preparation, reflecting a harmony between the leader and those he was called to serve. A moment where the trajectory of history shifted seamlessly from the mantle of one prophet to another, and the promise of the land they had been journeying toward began to feel tangible and within reach. In this pivotal hour, the allegiance of the Israelites was more than a declaration. It was a covenant renewed, a communal affirmation of faith, trust, and purpose that would define their path into the battles, the settlements, and the challenges that awaited them. Their unity, forged through past hardships and strengthened by the presence of a leader shaped for the task, became a living testimony to the enduring power of divine guidance and human obedience. The story of that moment is not merely one of succession but of transformation, illustrating how a people, once scarred and fragmented, can rise in unison to embrace their destiny when guided by the hand of a prepared and faithful leader, carrying forward the vision that God had laid before them with unwavering clarity and purpose. As the Israelites stood on the banks of the Jordan River, their eyes fixed on the waters that had long been a natural barrier between them and the land promised to their ancestors, an air of anticipation and tension hung heavily over the camp. Memories of past miracles lingered in their hearts, particularly the awe-inspiring Red Sea crossing under Moses' leadership, where the waters had obeyed the divine command and the people had passed through on dry ground, leaving their enemies defeated behind them. Now, with Moses gone and Joshua assuming the mantle of leadership, the question of continuity and divine favor weighed on every heart. For a nation accustomed to seeing God's power manifest in tangible, miraculous ways could hardly trust a leader whose authority had not yet been tested in such a dramatic fashion. Joshua, aware of the magnitude of the moment, approached the river with a mixture of solemn reverence and steadfast confidence, understanding that the act about to unfold would not only open the path forward, but also serve as an unmistakable sign to all that God's guidance remained with Israel. At his command, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant stepped into the swirling waters. And as they did, the river began to respond in a manner reminiscent of the Red Sea, its waters halting and piling up in a formidable wall on either side, creating a dry path through the center. The crowd watched in stunned silence, a mixture of fear, wonder, and burgeoning faith etching itself onto every face as the reality of the miracle unfolded before them. The physical act of crossing was important, but its significance went far beyond logistics. It was a public, undeniable confirmation that Joshua was indeed the chosen leader, appointed not by human decree but by the authority of God himself, whose plans continued without interruption. The Israelites moved forward cautiously at first, each step across the river imbued with a sense of sacred responsibility. For this passage symbolized more than entering new territory, it represented the validation of their unity, their obedience, and their trust in a leader who had been prepared through decades of learning, witnessing, and serving under Moses. The waters, halted and ordered by divine command, spoke to the continuity of God's presence and the seamless transition of leadership. To the people, this miracle was a tangible proof that the promises made to their forefathers were still unfolding according to God's design, that their journey was far from over, and that the new chapter under Joshua's guidance would be marked by the same miraculous provision and protection that had defined their past. The significance of the Jordan crossing extended beyond the immediate spectacle, for it reinforced a profound lesson about faith, obedience, and divine legitimacy. The people, many of whom had struggled with doubt or rebellion in previous generations, witnessed firsthand that God's power was not tied to a single individual, but flowed through leaders who were chosen and consecrated for the task. Joshua's authority, now visibly affirmed through the parting of the river, became inseparable from the divine will, and the act itself served as a reminder that God's plans moved inexorably forward, even as human leaders changed. Each footstep across the dry river echoed a deeper spiritual truth. The journey of a nation, the fulfillment of promises, and the realization of destiny were anchored in the harmony between faithful leadership and unwavering divine guidance. As the last of the Israelites stepped onto the far bank, the Jordan returned to its natural flow, as if acknowledging the completion of a covenantal moment, leaving behind a landscape both literal and symbolic that marked a turning point in history. In that instant, the miracle was more than water held at bay. It was the confirmation of continuity, the public affirmation of Joshua's divine authority, and the manifestation of God's enduring presence among a people prepared to follow with renewed faith, courage, and unity into the challenges that lay ahead. The story of the Jordan crossing stands as a testament to the seamless transition of leadership, the power of divine intervention, and the enduring bond between a faithful God and the nation he had called to inherit his promises. As Joshua prepared the Israelites for the daunting campaign ahead, the weight of leadership pressed heavily upon his shoulders, tempered by decades of preparation under Moses yet intensified by the enormity of what lay before him. The promised land, while abundant and fertile, was occupied by fortified cities and formidable armies, and the success of this mission depended not merely on courage, strategy, or numbers, but on the unshakable presence of God guiding their every step. In the quiet moments before the battle, as the sun began to cast long shadows across the arid plains, Joshua encountered a figure whose presence radiated authority and otherworldly power. A warrior whose armor gleamed with a brilliance that seemed to shimmer beyond natural light. This was no ordinary soldier, but the pre-incarnate Christ, the commander of the Lord's army, appearing to impart both reassurance and instruction to the man chosen to lead God's people into conquest and fulfillment of his promises. Joshua, struck with awe and a mixture of fear and reverence, fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the realization that this was a divine encounter meant to orient his understanding of leadership, warfare, and the source of true victory. The commander's voice, firm yet imbued with a profound calm, conveyed a truth that would forever shape Joshua's mission. Success in battle, and indeed in life, does not stem from human skill alone, nor from clever tactics or overwhelming force, but from an unwavering reliance on God's presence, guidance, and favor. Every step, every command, and every decision must be rooted in obedience to divine will. For it is through alignment with God's purpose that even the seemingly impossible can be achieved. This moment crystallized in Joshua's mind the principle that leadership under God requires humility, faith, and the recognition that human strength is limited, whereas God's power is infinite and unstoppable. The encounter served not only to encourage Joshua personally, but also to define the ethos of the Israelite army under his command. As the people prepared for the first engagement, they could sense the weight of a mission greater than themselves, inspired by a leader whose authority was confirmed not merely by inheritance from Moses or tradition, but by direct encounter with the divine. Joshua's confidence, now rooted in the visible assurance of God's presence, translated into careful yet bold actions, ensuring that strategy was harmonized with obedience. Courage was balanced with humility, and the morale of the Israelites was strengthened by their understanding that God was actively leading them. The commander of the Lord's army became the living embodiment of divine partnership, teaching that every victory was ultimately a testament to God's sovereignty rather than human achievement, a lesson that Joshua would carry into every battle and every decision that followed. This divine visitation also illustrated a profound theological truth to all who would later recount the story, that God's involvement in human history is personal, immediate, and transformational. Joshua's encounter underscored that ultimate authority and victory reside not in physical might but in spiritual alignment, that the path to fulfillment of God's promises is navigated through reverence, discernment, and reliance on his guidance. The Israelites, witnessing the leadership of a man who walked with the visible presence of God, were emboldened, their unity reinforced, and their hearts attuned to the spiritual dimension of their mission. It became evident that each conquest, each city taken, and each obstacle overcome would not be the result of sheer force alone, but the manifestation of a divine plan unfolding through a leader attuned to God's will, ensuring that the story of Israel's journey into the Promised Land would be remembered not merely as a military campaign, but as a testament to faith, obedience, and the transformative power of encountering God in the midst of life's most defining moments. In that encounter, Joshua learned the indispensable truth that human effort, while necessary, is insufficient without God's presence, that ultimate victory is anchored in divine guidance, and that every act of leadership must acknowledge the supremacy of a power far greater than oneself, a principle that would guide the Israelites through triumphs and trials alike as they entered a destiny ordained by God and realized through faithful obedience to His eternal will. As the Israelites stepped across the Jordan and into the Promised Land, a profound transformation began to take shape, one that went far beyond military victories or territorial conquests. For decades, they had relied upon manna, the miraculous bread from heaven, which had sustained them in the harsh and unforgiving wilderness, symbolizing God's provision and their dependence upon His direct intervention. Each morning, they had gathered it with careful obedience, trusting in the daily gift from God, yet never fully experiencing the freedom or responsibility that came with the abundance that awaited them. The cessation of manna marked a turning point, a moment of profound spiritual and practical significance, signaling that the era of passive reliance was ending and that a new chapter of active engagement and stewardship was beginning. The Israelites were now called to step into the land God had promised, to cultivate it, to harvest it, and to experience the fruits of their labor in partnership with divine provision. Joshua, mindful of the lessons from the wilderness, guided the people with both firmness and encouragement, helping them understand that entering the Promised Land was not merely a reward for faith, but a test of faith in action. They could no longer depend solely on miracles that appeared each morning. They were now participants in the unfolding of God's promises, required to act with courage, discernment, and responsibility. The land was fertile and rich, yet it demanded effort, strategy, and cooperation. Every harvest, every built city, and every secured territory became a tangible reflection of the people's obedience, diligence, and unity on God's guidance. This shift from dependence to participation was not merely logistical. It was deeply symbolic, representing a maturation of faith, a transition from receiving sustenance as a gift to actively engaging in the work of God's plan, and a recognition that divine blessing is intertwined with human action when guided by righteous purpose. For the Israelites, the absence of manna stirred a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. Some felt the weight of uncertainty, recalling the comfort of the familiar daily provision. Yet Joshua's leadership reminded them that fear must not overshadow faith. He encouraged them to trust that God, who had guided them through desert hardships and miraculous rescues, would now equip them to thrive through their own efforts, as long as those efforts were aligned with His commands. The people began to witness the harmony between divine guidance and personal responsibility, realizing that their labor was not in opposition to God's provision but a continuation of it, a partnership in the fulfillment of His promises. Each cultivated field, each shared meal, and each community established reinforced the profound lesson that God's abundance does not eliminate human effort. Rather, it calls it into fruitful expression, blending faith with action in a dynamic cycle of blessing and responsibility. This transition also reshaped the Israelites' collective identity. No longer wanderers dependent on the immediate provision of heaven, They became heirs and stewards of the land, entrusted with a tangible inheritance that demanded vision, cooperation, and moral discernment. The end of manna reminded them that God's blessings are often realized through engagement, that abundance is experienced most fully when met with active participation, and that divine promises unfold most powerfully when human initiative aligns with divine will. The people learned that true freedom is not found in effortless provision, but in the courage to step forward, work the land, and partake in the bounty God had prepared, embodying the trust, faith, and obedience that had carried them through the wilderness and now sustained them as they embraced the life and legacy of the promised land. Through this transformation, the Israelites discovered that God's gifts are not static, that miracles are not merely to be received but to be built upon, and that entering the promised land required a mature, active faith, one that harmonizes dependence with action, trust with responsibility, and divine provision with human effort, ensuring that the story of their journey would be remembered not only as a tale of miracles, but as a living testament to the power of faith in motion and the enduring partnership between God and His people. As the Israelites settled into the land flowing with promise and abundance, Joshua received a divine command that would challenge both the body and the spirit of the people. A command that transcended immediate concerns of conquest and survival and struck at the very heart of their covenant with God. Before any further military campaigns could commence, before the walls of Jericho or the fortified cities could fall, God instructed Joshua to reinstitute the ancient rite of circumcision among all Israelite males. This command was not arbitrary. It was a deliberate call to realign the people with the covenant that had bound them to God since the days of Abraham. In the past, the wandering generations had been shielded by divine protection, and many of the Israelites had not undergone the rite due to the harshness of the wilderness and the practical impossibilities of their journey. Now, standing on the threshold of fully inhabiting the promised land, the cessation of manna and the settling of territories demanded a spiritual readiness that matched their physical presence. The act of circumcision was, in essence, a tangible symbol of commitment, a visible sign of faith that would prepare them to face challenges not only with military strength, but with a unified heart attuned to God's guidance. Joshua, aware of the significance of this command, gathered the leaders and people with gravity and care, understanding that the ceremony carried both physical pain and profound spiritual weight. It was a moment that transcended individual readiness. It was about collective identity and obedience, about cleansing the past generational disobedience and recommitting the nation to the covenant that had sustained them through desert hardships. The elders, warriors, and young men alike submitted to the rite with solemnity, acknowledging that their protection and success in the battles ahead were not solely dependent on swords and strategy, but on their faithfulness to God's law. As the ceremony unfolded, the people experienced a renewal of purpose, purification of intent, and a deepened awareness that their victories would be divinely sanctioned only when they honored the covenant in both spirit and action. This act of obedience reshaped the communal consciousness of Israel. The rite of circumcision, once considered a personal and familial responsibility, became a unifying force, reminding everyone that the battles to come were fought not just on the physical plane, but on the spiritual one as well. It reinforced the lesson that divine favor is inseparable from covenant faithfulness, that the strength of an army is meaningless without the integrity and obedience of its people, and that God's commands, however demanding, were designed to prepare them for the long-term fulfillment of His promises. Even as the men bore the pain of the ritual, their hearts were being fortified, and their spirits sharpened with clarity of purpose, ready to confront enemies and claim the land not through human ambition alone, but through obedience and alignment with God's will. The timing of this command, immediately before their first battles, emphasized that spiritual readiness cannot be postponed for convenience. Joshua's leadership ensured that the people understood the profound connection between obedience, faith, and success. In the weeks and months that followed, as the Israelites encountered fortified cities, natural obstacles, and enemy forces, the memory of that covenantal renewal became a source of courage and unity. Each step they took in the promised land was informed by the knowledge that their strength was amplified not merely by numbers or tactics, but by a faithful and consecrated relationship with God, a relationship visibly affirmed through the act of circumcision. Through this pivotal moment, the Israelites learned that preparation for victory extends beyond training, strategy, and provision. It begins in the heart and is expressed through obedience. The command to circumcise every male became a defining moment, linking past generations to the present, connecting divine promise to human action, and reinforcing the enduring truth that God's favor rests upon those who honor His covenant with sincere faith and steadfast devotion. In embracing this command, Israel was not only equipped for battle but was spiritually aligned to experience the fullness of God's promises in the land He had given them. As we reflect on the remarkable journey from Moses' final moments on Mount Nebo to the Israelites' first steps into the promised land under Joshua's leadership, one clear truth emerges: God's plans are sovereign, unfolding with precision and purpose even when human eyes can only perceive uncertainty and vulnerability. The transition of leadership was not a gradual process but a decisive moment, demonstrating that God's timing is perfect and His authority unshakable. From the parting of the Jordan River to the appearance of the commander of the Lord's army, from the cessation of manna to the covenantal act of circumcision, each event reinforced a single, profound lesson: true success comes not from human strength, strategy, or timing, but from trust in God, obedience to His commands, and readiness to step into the destiny He has prepared. The Israelites' journey reminds us that life is full of transitions and challenges that may seem daunting, even insurmountable. Yet, just as Joshua inherited the mantle of leadership and guided the people with courage and faith, we too are called to respond to God's direction with readiness and unwavering trust. The miracles they witnessed, the river standing still, the promise of provision, the reaffirmation of the covenant, were not merely spectacular events. They were symbols of a deeper spiritual truth. God equips those He calls, preparing them through trials, lessons, and divine guidance so that when the moment arrives, they can act boldly, faithfully, and effectively. As we close this story, it is clear that obedience and faith are inseparable from God's plan. Every challenge faced by Joshua and the Israelites required a heart aligned with God's will, a mind focused on His promises, and the courage to act despite fear or doubt. Their example teaches us that spiritual readiness is cultivated over time through humility, perseverance, and consistent trust in God's guidance. It shows that even in times of apparent vulnerability, God's plans are working, preparing us for moments of destiny that we may not yet fully comprehend. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of the most pivotal moments in biblical history. If this story inspired you or deepened your understanding of faith, leadership, and divine purpose, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an exploration of history, Scripture, and the timeless lessons they offer. Every step we take in faith, every act of obedience, and every story we remember brings us closer to understanding the fullness of God's sovereign plan. May this tale of courage, obedience, and divine guidance encourage you to trust in God's direction in your own life, stepping boldly into the purpose He has prepared for you, confident that even amid uncertainty, His plan is unfolding perfectly.